All right. Hello, Cohort 1. Welcome to your third EDI session. During this session for the month of February/March, we are actually going to spend some time focusing on documenting student progress and the power of student data chats. So for our agenda for session 3, we're going to spend some time discussing the purpose of data chats, stakeholder investment, how to set up your data chats, data meetings for success, and then what happens after you complete a data chat with your students and or parents. So as we get ready to dive into considering and thinking about student data chats, I want you to take some time to review our norms. What norm do you think is important for you to focus on as you're considering planning a data meeting for students or for parents? Also, as you are continuing to reflect on your data coming out of Data Day for quarter 2. So our objectives for this session are to support you in understanding the rationale behind conducting student data chats, identifying the data set to utilize to support in your student and or parent data chats, planning a student or a parent data chat with an individual or a group, and then building student ownership over data and investment and using strategies to increase student achievement. In terms of your teacher preparation standards tied to the EDI program, this session is going to support you in how to prepare and leading a group discussion, also implementing some norms and routines for classroom discourse and work, how to specify and reinforce some productive student behavior with actually having a data chat and reviewing student outcomes, and then setting long and short-term goals for students. In terms of your professional standards, we are going to cover learner-centered supports as well as strategic partnerships. Core modules that we are focusing on are going to be family and community relationships, as well as instructional strategies within this session. In terms of assessing your learning, so the ask is that you actually conduct a data chat, okay? You have some autonomy. You can conduct a data chat with an individual, a small group, or a whole group. You also can conduct your data chat with students or with parents, or maybe actually having a meeting with the student and their respective parent. You should have some sort of data chat presentation. You also have to have evidence of some artifacts that were shared during that data chat. And then the ask is that you create a reflection where you're reflecting on the data chat that you held, the impact that it had on the individual, small group, or whole group, and what are some of your thoughts and how to move forward coming out of that data chat. Your artifacts tied to your data chat are going to be due Friday, March 28th, 2025. So you have an entire month to get some things together and have a data chat. So first, we're going to start off with defining data chats, defining them as well as discussing their purpose. So what exactly is a data chat? A data chat is a conversation where you're discussing the progress of a student or your entire class. And this progress discussion is actually informed by the use of quantitative or qualitative data. The purpose of engaging in a data chat is really to create a shared understanding of the strengths as well as the areas of opportunity for one student or a group of students based on current data. Data chats are utilized to invest students or families in creating goals to support areas of opportunity. And so now we're going to spend some time actually talking about that stakeholder investment. So what are some of the things that you can do to get your parents as well as your students on board with improving data? We're going to start off with taking a look at how one school district works together to empower their students with data.
I think it's important to talk with students about data because that's information specifically about them and where they are in the process of their learning. And if they don't know where they are, then they don't know where they need to go and how to grow. And so having those conversations, data conversations, is very important.
Before, you learned some content and you're given a test on it, and you never really even went back over the test. You just moved on. Now we're going back and reviewing and seeing where they messed up or where they maybe read the question correctly, or they might have just been having a bad day. So we can get answers to those questions, and students really, I think the value that comes from them having that ownership of their own data.
We have data chats with our students all the time, and in regards to them owning their data. One of our best practices with students and their data is to have them come in and sit with their teachers. We just have an open dialogue, open conversation around what's going on, what's happening, how can we better support you? So that allows the students to not be intimidated by the data conversation or being in a collaborative setting with their teachers. It's a culture that we've really tried to establish with students, that we want to hear from you, not just the data.
The feedback that we've gotten from the students has been pretty positive. They really like to hear information from the principals as opposed to their teachers or even just from their parents. They like to see the administration is serious about this and have taken an interest in them. And they just seem to really appreciate that.
The information does make me feel better because it makes it a lot easier for me to keep moving forward.
I don't get intimidated or anything by it. I like it because it helps me. Knowing my data helps me know which route I need to take.
For students, I think it's again an aha moment that we have this data at our disposal and that we truly care about how they're performing and are interested in what it takes to get them to the next level. So students are really feeling that teachers are coming together, administrators are coming together, cluster support, we're all coming together for the benefit of them.
The impact that it's had on student performance. A lot of the students got more serious, and we often took them back to the time when they had a data chat with an administrator, and it really kind of helped motivate, as well as just get them focused on what standards they needed to focus on, and so they could move forward from there.
One thing that I've enjoyed, I guess, the most about having the data chats is just sitting down one-on-one with the students and getting to know them a little better. So sitting down with them and talking about the data and talking about, goals and things they can do to help improve their data was just a wonderful experience for me. And I'm excited about continuing to do that.
Right. So let's dive into student empowerment. When you hold data chats with students, it supports students in understanding the learning journey. So this gives them an opportunity to build and make a connection to the assessments that they are continuously taking within your classroom, having a better understanding of what actually is being measured, and also for students to recognize that all of this data that's collected during the assessments is actually tied to them. It supports students in putting them in the driver's seat when it comes to their learning. Think about the impact it has on students for them to understand, hey, your performance on this particular test is going to show and reveal areas of strength and areas of opportunity. Do students understand what happens when they actually provide and give their very, very best effort when it comes to a test versus just taking it and really not putting in the effort? And so then we don't get the right data that we can utilize to support them in being successful. During a data chat, students have an opportunity to actually see their data and to actually own their data. Wow, like this is how I performed. This is me. If this is what I did this time, I can make some adjustments and I can actually get better results the next time. When students are involved in data chats, it supports them in playing a role in setting goals to actually improve their achievement. Excuse me. We can also leverage data chats to empower our parents. When parents are involved in data chats or data meetings, it supports us in supporting them, right? Because information actually leads to action. Many times our parents will say, hey, if I understood more about, what's taking place in class, that puts me in a position to actually help my student or help my child. Remember, our parents are our partners in the great work that we do. Parents can also support their child actually in the goal setting. They hear the goals the students are setting for themselves, and it supports parents in also understanding their role, right? So now that I know where my child has strengths, I understand their areas of opportunity, I understand the steps that we're going to take to support them in becoming more successful. Now the parent knows where they can actually lean in. And so now we're going to come back to the exact same school district, and we're going to hear more about how we empower parents when we introduce them to the data of their children.
So important to talk to parents about their students' data because they need to be informed. They want to be informed, and sometimes they just don't know. And so when we share information like data with parents, then they feel more empowered to help their children learn.
Our parents are our partners. We're not doing this job alone. It takes the school, it takes the administrators, the counselors, the teachers, it takes the students owning and the parents also. One, knowing the vision and the mission for students, helping students establish their long-term and short-term goals.
It's important to talk to parents about their students' data so that they know where they're at. I think we send it home a lot, but they don't truly understand. So the more that parents know about where their student is, the better that they can help them at home. The way that we've translated our data is to make it as simple as possible, using lots of visuals. And instead of giving all the information, trying to prioritize and say, this is what's necessary for them to know. This is what we can exclude, but giving them enough information to get a clear snapshot of where their child is at.
The conversations we have with parents, we usually call them data chats. Parents come in and there may be a concern from their end, it may be a concern from the school's end. We take that opportunity to talk about the whole child.
The feedback we got from the parents at our data night is they were very surprised and thankful that they could see and understand what the data was about and how they could help their children to be more successful.
Me siento muy bien porque sé que ahora puedo poner más de mi parte para ayudarlo. Entiendo los reportes ahora porque sé de qué hablan específicamente cada uno de ellos. En el pasado no estaba muy segura de lo que ellos te querían decir los reportes y ahora que nos explicaron, es más fácil saber en lo que están fallando, en qué necesitan más ayuda.
Toda la información ha sido muy buena. Ahí nos damos cuenta en qué materias ellos están fallando y en cuál es la que nos tenemos que enfocar más para ayudarles, para que ellos lleven todas las materias con las notas lo mejor posible.
Involving parents in data chats has been really beneficial because instead of it just being a teacher and student relationship when it comes to school, it's now a teacher, student, and parent relationship. So everyone's working together for student success.
When our students leave us at the end of the day, we want them to be going into an environment where parents can really plug in and help support the work that's taking place at school.
So now that we've learned a little bit about how data chats can support in empowering students and parents, now we're going to review what are some of the things we need to do to set up for success. So we'll take a look at some of the tools that you can use to support yourself in creating an informative data chat experience. So when you're preparing to create your data chat or your data meeting, here are some questions that you want to consider, right? So what data actually should be reviewed? What type of resources should be used? And then how do you prepare yourself as the educator for the data chat? So remember, when we talked about data chats and their purpose, we talked about introducing two types of data to our students and our parents, right? So the first type of data is quantitative data. When you think of quantitative data, you want to consider the assessments where there's some sort of instrument that's utilized to take the assessment. So this would be like ANET or NWEA or like FitnessGram, like those sort of things are quantitative elements, right? When you are engaging in a quantitative assessment, there are like some measurable outcomes, some measurable numbers. That is different from qualitative data. So qualitative data, you consider like you use your senses to really observe the results. So consider when you are taking anecdotal notes and you are observing your students interacting and you're writing notes on what you see a student say, what you hear from your students, and the actions that they take. So anything that you write down, anything that's based or grounded in an observation, that more or less is qualitative data. Both quantitative and qualitative data are important data points and resources that you can leverage depending on the type of data chat you're going to have with your students. When you are considering, well, what type of tool or what sort of resources you want to utilize, think about your classroom, right? We all have data trackers in the classroom. There's very specific data that we are continuously tracking. Majority of our classrooms also have like a data wall. So you have an area where data is being tracked. When you're considering the data that you want to navigate during a data chat, think about the data that's directly impacting student achievement and data that you're already making mention of with your students. So here are some examples of the type of data sources and tools that we're used to navigating on a regular basis. So again, when you think about ANET data, FitnessGram data from PE, when students take the M-STEP or the NWEA, those are examples again of quantitative data, right? They're taken on some sort of tool or resource. The data is normative. So with these particular data points, normative data, you can see student performance on like a broad national scale. And it's also performance data. So this is data that takes place after a certain particular time frame. So the end of a quarter, the end of a semester, etc. Then you have other data that's a little bit closer to home. So that would be like classroom assessments, exit tickets, report card grades. Any of these assessments could be quantitative in nature, but they could also be qualitative data, right? You can make some observations while students are working in a group project, and you can write down that information, and that can be a part of the assessment, right? This data set tends to be more summative, right? Again, it's taking place at the end of a unit, at the end of a quarter, and is also performance-based data for students. And then you have your attendance data, you have behavior data, even social emotional data in regards to our students. So again, this sort of data can be quantitative in nature. A lot of times that attendance data, how many days students were in school, et cetera, that's more quantitative, but also the data could be qualitative in nature. So when we have like behavior data, if a student is on any sort of plan and you're jotting down notes, that counts as qualitative data. This data is more we consider to be formative. So it is going to evolve. It will change over time. It is also being captured more in the moment. We also recognize that this data can be like more of demographic-based data and also cultural-based data. Finally, we have solutions. So when we're putting students on RTI plans, you can have a complete data chat around that solutions plan, right? That data as well can be quantitative or qualitative in nature and is also formative. So it's ongoing data that is informed by what's taking place every day with the student. So now that we've talked about some sources, of data and some tools you can utilize. We're going to get more into what are some of the components that can be placed in a data chat folder. So when you think of some sort of folder that you want to utilize for your data chat, this would be a folder of information that you would provide for your students and or your parents. Excuse me. So again, we want to think about student data that's age appropriate for the group, that's engaging in the chat. Want to consider how are students or parents going to chart the data. Reflection document. So how are we going to reflect on the strengths and the weaknesses based on the data, as well as some next steps planning. For this, again, we will review a few different type of student data examples that you can leverage. These particular examples that we're going to discuss are more so geared towards NWEA. They have quite a few different types of data chat resources. We also have some resources that come from ANET. Excuse me. So when it comes to NWEA, think about the student profile. You can pull off student profile. This is more geared towards an individual student. Depending on what subject areas students are taking NWEA in, you'll get an individual profile for each subject area. On the student's profile report, it's going to show, excuse me, their quintile, percentile range. It will also show where the student performs on the quadrant. It will give information on projections. So whether or not they are on track based off of their score to pass the ACT or the SAT, that information will happen more so with third grade and up. Also, if it's reading, you will get the Lexile score range for students to get a better understanding of their reading level. In the student profile report, it would also give information on the subset areas where these are areas of strength for the child. So these are areas where they're performing extremely well. They will have their instructional area score. So these are the subset areas where with teacher support, the child is ready to have instruction and to present mastery. Then you will have other areas where the student isn't currently ready for instruction yet, and they will need extra support with those areas. By the third page of the student profile report, you will be able to see a continuum of tests the students have taken over time. So if students have been a part of the school system for several years, you'll be able to actually see a color-coded graph, color-coded based off of our quintile ranges in WEA, and it will show you on scale student score, and you'll be able to see the color range of their quintile performance. NWEA also has another individual report referred to as a student progress report. So with this student progress report, again, it actually gives you student performance over a range of time. So the longer the student has been a part of your particular school, you will have student performance from the fall, winter, spring test. It also will have at the end of that bar graph that like blue kind of dotted shaded piece, which is like the RIT, projected RIT growth for that particular year. When you're taking a look at this progress report, it shows you not only the student RIT, it'll show the district grade level mean, so like the average child in the school district where they scored. It also will give you the norm grade level mean, so that's nationally students on average in this grade level, how they scored. This report will show you the grade of the students, their RIT growth goal score. It will show you the amount of RIT growth they're projected to make for that particular year in that particular subject area. It will also show you not only the growth projection, but the true amount of growth that actually took place. And then it will show you the percentile range that the child is performing in. Then we have the NWEA family report. So the family report, again, is going to give you information on the particular student. It will show you the percentile range that they are performing in. It will show you, based off of that percentile, the colored quintile they're performing in as well. Based off of the 4 quadrants, it will let you know if the child is performing in like low average achievement, high achievement range, etc. And on this form, it also is going to give predictive information on, based off of your child's current performance. Would they be projected to pass the M-STEP? Would they be partially proficient, proficient, not proficient, etc. ANET also has a student report that you can pull. So for example, I pulled a report for this particular student. I just took their name off. What it does is, depending on the particular ANET quarterly test, so this one, for example, was math, it will show the standard areas of performance, the description for that area. It will show the percent of questions the students got correct in that particular area. Then it will give you the comparison to the network on average, how the average child, the percent of questions they got correct. Areas where child had their best performance, you can see, and you can go more in depth, but also anywhere where they didn't have their best performance, you can click on it. You can also pull off homework sheets that will support students for practicing at home. Now we're going to spend some time getting into, after reviewing student data, how you actually can support students in charting their data. We're going to take a few moments to hear about why it's important for students to be in a position where they can track their own academic growth.
My name is Rochelle Allen. I am a 5th grade teacher at Science Hall Elementary School. When students track their own growth and their own data, there's absolutely no doubt that their scores increase, and it's across the school. Kids are very in the moment. Like, they take the test, it's over, they don't think about it anymore. They need to have their eyes on that test to see what they did, why they did it. That's how they're learning to increase their scores, not just to understand the curriculum, because many of them do. They are just missing one little part. And until they actually see the test, see what they did, go back and justify why they got it wrong, because that's a big thing too. Not just, I got it wrong. They're going back to justify their answer of, oh, it is this because, and they tell me why. When we are looking through our information, we're able to see where we're struggling. And the big thing that my students need to know, it's not just eyes on them, that they feel singled out. We're looking at the whole 5th grade. For example, we've been struggling a lot on summary. So we were able to focus a lot the past few weeks on breaking apart nonfiction expository texts to be able to summarize that. And we were super successful, and our kids were able, majority of them got both of those questions on that Starlight correct. And they were like, we got it, we got it. They were so excited. And just being able to hear them, they knew that they got it incorrectly the last time they took it, and they got both of them right. They're ecstatic. If anybody could just hear kids when they get it, it's just like joy to teachers' ears.
So first, we'll take a look at a tracking form that you could leverage for younger students, right? So what's important to understand is that at any age, students can start tracking their data and tracking their outcomes. So on a primary tracking form, there may be a short way for students to write the learning target. Remember, that's the I can statement. You may have the students draw something that aligns with their performance, or maybe you, are creating, you're charting it on the board, and the students are actually like building charts to match your chart. They have an opportunity in their own words to talk about their performance and how they feel. And then it will revisit this piece again. It has at the bottom of the form where students can, understanding their data, delineate whether they got it and understood it, whether or not they're on their way, or if they may need more help. On an older student tracking form, you may want to give them an opportunity to really see their projection and where they fall, and also taking a look at not only their score, but also what it looks like through fall, winter, and spring. Let's say if it's on some sort of normative assessment, as well as grade level. So here's an example of a NWEA reading document. On top of that document, it kind of has like some growth goal scores, kindergarten through 5th grade, student performance in the fall, the winter versus the spring. Students can write down their score for that particular area where they took the test. So for this example, it says, hey, you took it in the wintertime. They write down their score. They write down what's the projected growth target for their grade level for wintertime. And then they also can write down the grade level goal. So this helps students to really take a look at how they performed, whether or not their performance is in alignment with where they should be in terms of their projected RIT growth. They also get to see where their performance is and where it aligns to the grade level goal. So when it comes to data reflection and thinking about next steps, this is where you really start to see that stakeholder reaction to data. So what are students perceiving? What are parents thinking about how they're reacting to the performance that they're seeing? This is where we start to see an identification of glows as well as grows. You're going to start to see some reflection that your stakeholders are doing on what they should do next or what they need to do differently to become successful. And during the reflection process of the data meeting, this is where true ownership actually begins. Let's go back to our primary data chart sheet, right? So remember, I talked about that continuum where even again at a young age, students, based off of their performance, based off of guidance from you, they are in a position where they can say, you know what, I got this, which means, hey, maybe I'm advanced, I completely understand it. Again, when you think of like an I'm on my way, I understand some of this. That may be an element of kind of being like partially proficient versus I need more help to learn this, so I'm not proficient. What is important for us to understand is that students really, they know where they are, right? They have an understanding of how they're performing. The younger they are, however, they may not be able to put into words what their performance is. And as children get older, they also need help and support with putting into words their thought process on their current performance. Again, we think about this when it comes to our older students, right? So when it comes to their level of data reflection, we want them actually charting, like, what do you need to do to actually become a better reader, right? Giving them sentence starters so they can think about, do they need to read more books? Is it paying more attention in class? Is it actually taking time to review vocabulary and definition or working on fluency, right? What will you start to do today to become a stronger reader? So actually giving students an opportunity to reflect and to plan out their next steps. And that's going to support them with taking ownership, as well as knowing as I go into this next quarter, this is what I should be doing. You can also have a more comprehensive data chart that where students complete, right? So what grade are you in? Or what grade do you currently have? So think about leveraging a chart like this if you were reviewing report card grades or right after an assessment. Like, you know, what grade did I receive? Why do I believe I have this grade, right? What grade would I like to have? That's really great, right? Like how I perform, does that align with the desired outcome I had for myself? What can you do to improve your goal? I love the final question on here where it says, what can I as your teacher do to help you succeed? When students are able to respond to a question like that, it gives you as a teacher an opportunity to understand more about your students and what they may need from you. Finally, we want to spend some time supporting you as a teacher with how do you actually prepare for the data chat. So we've talked about some of the different tools and resources we would utilize, the type of data we would take a look at, as well as the reflection that you want to have your parents or students perform. Now it's time for you. I'm a huge script person, right? I don't even notice within this, I'm kind of like looking off to the side because I construct a script anytime I am doing any sort of like presentation. Scripts support you with really being structured with your data meeting. It's going to be something that's going to keep you on track. It keeps the focus on the data as well as whatever next steps you may want to have. When you are crafting and creating a script for yourself, it also gives you an opportunity to anticipate any misunderstandings students or parents may have during the meeting, what sort of questions may come up, as well as what sort of concerns may they have that you may be in a position that you need to address. When you craft and create a script, it gives you an opportunity to actually practice before you engage in your data chat or your data meeting. Also, when you're scripting out what you want to say, it supports in increasing your level of confidence. So now I am coming in front of my students, in front of my parents. I have a script for what we're going to do. I am more intentional about getting my message across, and that's going to support me in looking like, okay, I actually do know what I'm talking about. You may also want to consider building some sort of data chat presentation, right? So whenever you're going to have a meeting with anyone, you really want to have some sort of visual focus during the meeting. I mean, imagine if you had to spend an entire hour listening to me and you didn't have anything to look at, right? But also, when we're able to leverage visuals, it supports in making the data real. Taking a look at the data, it also gives us important to stamp some important points. So what do we really, really want our students and or parents to walk away understanding? We have our presentation. It's another way to support us in keeping the meeting focused as well as results driven. And it supports us with having more intentionality with our meeting. Another element that you want to make sure you're planning as an educator are what are the examples that you're leveraging during the data chat to support learning. So if you've never engaged in a data chat before with a group of students or parents, they're going to need some help and support from you in regards to how they should be processing the information that's being presented to them. So for example, considering the modeling that you have to do, right? How are you modeling? Okay, now we're actually going to complete a graph and we're going to graph where your data is, right? That's something you want to model, or you want to model how to complete and fill out their data reflection form. Consider your think alouds, right? How do you want to support your students as well as parents in processing the information that they're seeing? They're going to have a better understanding of the process they should be doing by hearing your think aloud. Supporting students with sentence starters, right? Particularly if you want them to reflect on their performance, consider strategies that they need to try, what they can do better. Again, we want to support our students with giving them some anchors, give them some sentence starters to kind of get started with how they should be thinking about this. Also, you want to make sure you're charting the data along with your respective audience, and then monitoring with intention. So after you chart the data, are you walking around and supporting your students and or parents with their charting of the data, writing down their reflections, etc.? Academic lapse has been a large focus across our school district this year. This is a perfect opportunity for you to name some of those lapse, right? You can say, hey, I'm coming around. As you're writing down your reflections, I'm looking to see if you're leveraging the sentence starters that I just presented to you, right? So naming your laps as you're monitoring with intention is also helpful. So what happens next? After you've actually had the data chat with your students or your parents, what are some steps that you should take? So consider if you have a data wall in your classroom, you want to update the data on the data wall. If you don't have a data wall, you want to put one up, right? So whatever it is that I'm asking students to track and be aware of, I want to make sure that I, as well as the educator, am tracking that exact same data. You want to refer to and discuss the data often with your students. That's another element that supports in keeping it alive. Also, you want to take the time to tie data to classroom learning and assessments. So when there's something in particular that we're learning about, and if it's actually tied to the area where you had the data chat, you want to highlight that. You want to bring that up. If there's a test that students are about to take, and this data set is going to support them with seeing if they're making improvements based off of the information on the data chat, you want to elevate that as well, right? So those data walls support in keeping the data alive and give us a natural point to refer back to. You also want to consider, how are you keeping a record on the go of the student data, right? How are you keeping track of how students performed and what took place? So you want to collect student data, you should be collecting it from that respective data meeting. You want to leverage this data during your planning, right? So it should be informing how you are going to engage with students during instruction. Also, you want to leverage the data that's recorded here in supporting the academic monitoring laps that you're doing in your classroom. So this data set will support you in what you should be looking for, the laps that you call out, etc. Also, we want to focus on keeping parents up to date, right? So particularly if you engaged in a data chat meeting and parents attended, what's next, right? So spend time with parents, providing them with an update on the action steps of the students, right? So do you see evidence that students are actually following those action steps within the classroom? You want to check in with the parents around their parent support. Hey, you said that you were going to support Andrea with 15 minutes of reading a night. How is that going, right? So supporting them, checking in on them, being there to answer any questions or concerns they have. Also, you want to keep parents up to date with student performance in the classroom, and how does their current performance excuse me, on an assessment or classwork, how does it align to their goals, and are the action steps that were identified in the data chat? All right, so now we are coming to the end of our presentation on the power of student data chats. And as we get ready to end this session, I want to give you a few reminders. So we are going to do the month of March a little bit differently when it comes to our MTTC test preparation. I'm going to actually hold some individualized test preparation sessions in March. So we are purchasing MTTC practice tests in the respective areas that you're testing within cohort 1. So that is lower elementary subtests, as well as the health and PE test. I will reach out to each one of you individually, excuse me, to see if you're interested in this test prep support. So it would look like you coming in, taking an MTTC practice test, and then us going over those practice test responses so you can see the ones that you got correct or the ones that are incorrect, and then what you want to do in terms of studying as you get ready to take your test. Please remember, we are pushing for all tests to be complete by April 1st. The reason why we have an early deadline, number one, it gives you an opportunity to retake a test in the event that you don't pass it, right? Because you'll have to wait another 30 days. But our hope and prayer is that everyone's passing it the first time. Also, we want to make sure that we have this information in time for when it's time for us to review what we're doing for next year, because you are in the point where you should be getting on your interim certification. So the goal is that we are focusing on interim certification and taking a look at that as you dive into next year here at New Paradigm. So next steps, please make sure that coming out of this session that you start getting ready for your data chats and turning that information in by the end of March. You will have a February survey that is tied to this session. As always, we get better by hearing your feedback. You want to look out also for the EDI newsletter coming out in March. Thank you guys so much again. I hope that this session and the information was helpful, and best of luck to you as you are engaging with parents and working on student data chat.